Can I speak?
We'll
Hello.
just go through the formalities first. So we've just got a few meeting formalities. Welcome to everyone. It's very exciting to be at the stage where we're actually hearing from the oral submitters. We have had an unprecedented number of submissions for these two plans. With lots of different views, but we're really looking forward to hearing from everyone today, tomorrow and Monday. Because of the number of people that have asked to submit to us, we have had to limit to 5 minutes, and we are going to stick to that. I do know it makes it a bit, a little bit tight for some people, but we're confident that people can get their main points across in those 5 minutes and also allow time if they wish for some questions. So for the committee members, can you please let either myself or Marcella know if you need to leave the meeting? So we'll now start with the karakia, which we'll read together. Whakataka te hau ki te uru, whakataka te hau ki te tonga, kia mā kina kina ki uta, kia mā taratara ki tai, e hi ake ana te atakura, he tio, he huka, he hauhu, tihei Māori ora. I do have, just moving on to apologies, I do have an apology from Pāenga-whāwhā here for Monday. Thank you for letting us know about that. And Councillor Calvert for a late arrival tomorrow. Are there any other apologies? Yeah, so a partial absence between 3 and 4 p.m. tomorrow for Councillor Paul. Are there any other apologies? Both for the whole meeting? Monday's partial and tomorrow's and the entire meeting. It's just that we are quite a small committee, so we do need to know and be prepared.
And can I just note my later absence or late arrival tomorrow is due to being on other council business.
On other council business.
Thank you.
Okay, so, and Mayor Whānau, do you have?
I have an apology for Monday as I'll be on leave.
Okay, we'll do our numbers, but I think we'll be all right as long as those are all the apologies.
If not, just let me know.
Okay. Right, so I move that we accept those apologies. Do I have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor McNulty. We'll vote on those. Oh, we've got a few to add. Pauiwi Kelly was Friday and partial Monday. It's all right to go ahead and vote on these. We know what they are. The Secretariat will catch up with us. Thank you very much. Doing a great job. Right, conflict of interest declarations. Do we have any of those? So I don't see any conflict of interest, so that's all fine. And confirmation of minutes for the last meeting. So the minutes of the last meeting, which was the 6th of April, have been circulated. I move that they be taken as read and confirmed as an accurate record of that meeting. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Abdurrahman, you'll second it. Can we all vote on those, please? Right, and I declare that carried. There are no items not on the agenda, so we'll move into our public participation, which of course, as this is a meeting of hearings. So, and I'd like to invite Koi to speak to us. And Koi, I did see you earlier, so are you ready to go?
Yes, I am. Hello,
Yes,
everybody. Can you see me? And surprisingly, I'm inside a car at the moment because I am driving from Whangarei back to Auckland. And that's the only option I have. I could take the train if there's one, but there's none. So, yeah. I'm speaking to you guys today in support of the cycleway for Kilburnie and Thornton area. Because again, cycleway connections have to be established throughout the entire network. We cannot have patchy cycleway because they won't get used. It's only being utilized when all the network are connected, as in you don't drive down the road that's not connected to another road. So if you want to increase ridership, improving road safety, we need those cycle network established. And it's quite an eye-opening thing. I've been in Japan for the last 2 weeks, and I've seen more bikes than car. There are bike infrastructure, there's cycle network, there are bike storage everywhere. There are more bikes up count than cars. And next time when I come back, I'm renting a bike and I'm biking everywhere in Japan. I'm not, yeah. And if a country would the same, there was 35 million people in Tokyo, and they have more bikes than car. So we can do that for Wellington, and I'm looking forward to it. The city have changed dramatically when I first moved here in 2014. But now you go out to the waterfront in the morning, you see more bikes than people. And we need place for these bikes to go, and we need to establish the network. And I think that's all for me. It's really hot in here. If anyone have any questions.
Thank you, Koi. That's interesting to know about Japan. What do you think you'd really, really like to see? I mean, obviously the network, but you said it's really important to have it joined up. Do you have a particular thing that you are really looking forward to in what we proposed?
I'm looking forward to be able to cycle all the way from Newtown to Lyle Bay. That's for once. And the current cycle network in Kilbirnie are very truncated. And also it's really weird that when cycleway have to give way for car, where cycle network should be designed so that as a continuous network without interruption. Yeah. But I'm very happy with the cycleway design on Rongwatai Road. I think that's the best designed one in entire Wellington, and it's obviously in the cycleways along the waterfront. And they definitely need more cycleways in Thorndon.
Cool. Are there any other questions for Koi? Sorry, was there? Oh, Ben.
Kia ora Koi, just since we have a little bit of time. Having read a lot of the feedback, do you ever do shopping with a bike? And would you like to share a bit of what a shopping journey might look like as a cyclist?
Well, shopping with, I sold my car last year in September, and I've been buying everything on my bikes, and it was fine. It's absolutely fine. If you have rear racks going, and you can put on everything that you need on the bike and just bike everywhere. We found no issue doing grocery shopping. And there's always, if you need an item to deliver by cars, you can always pay for that to be done. You don't need to do it yourself.
Thank you very much, Koi. I think we probably have come to the end of the questions, but thank you for coming and sharing those thoughts with us. We appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Now, I'm wondering if Mark's here. Mark Johnston? I don't actually see him, but I do see, yes, Dr. David Tripp. So you're next on our list if you'd like to come up to the table or the podium.
And I'll be presenting together with Marion, who follows me. So we're combining our forces to say it once and say it well, if
yes,
that's all right.
But you are each scheduled 5 minutes because we've just got you down. But if you don't need that time, you don't need to take it.
We might together go just over 5 minutes.
Okay.
If that's all right. May I introduce myself? Kia ora katoa, ko David Tripp, tōku ingoa, mā te atua tātou katoa e arahi. And Marion, do you want to introduce yourself?
Kia ora everyone, I'm on Zoom at the moment because I'm day 10 COVID and still testing positive and didn't want any of you to end up in the situation I'm in. But I am Dr. Marion Layton. I've been the clinical lead for the National Immunisation Programme for here in Wellington at the moment.
Now, we were going to tag team the presentation given Marion's online. Just for clarity, I'll do the talking and then we'll both answer questions. Thank you. We have a real problem in New Zealand with a tsunami of chronic illnesses. These are cases of type 2 diabetes. While these are numbers, I see the people each day. people who will have early heart attacks, who will have amputations, who will end up on dialysis, who will go blind as a result of these dialysis. This is a tragedy unfolding in front of us. Likewise, cancer. I had to tell someone yesterday they were going to die of cancer. This is real. And sadly, for our Māori people, they're getting this the worst. These stats reflect the tragedy of inequality in our country as well. It's not all bad news. I've got an answer for you. A large study, one of many, cycling reduces the risk of all-cause mortality by over 40%, any cancer by over 40%, cardiovascular disease, typically heart attacks, by over 40%. And Marion and I would both attest that we have no pill that is this good. So when we look at our system around us, that is our illness system, that is where I work. This is our health system. That is where you are leaders. You have the health budget, and we call it transport. A particular interest in terms of Wellington Hospital, given its adjacency to Kilburnie. This is a site where 5,000 people work, not including the many patients and visitors. 43% live within 5 kilometres of the hospital, and currently over 60% drive to work. However, the cycleways around here must be joined up before people will really start to use them. We say that with, I think, good international evidence to back that claim. In addition to health, you'll be aware of the other drivers in front of you today. The requirement for us to meet our climate objectives, that we have to reduce car use by 20% of vehicle kilometres travelled. And if I just may quote the Environment Court, who considered this in the Riverlink case last year, there is undoubted benefit in moving travellers away from motor car use and towards walking, cycling and other small devices and public transport. In our view, there simply can be no doubt that taking all reasonable steps to increase mode share is an important factor. That was after considering all the evidence in a local case. I don't doubt for a moment that this transition is a difficult one. I don't doubt for a moment that the costs of this transition are minuscule compared to the costs of the health crisis that is coming our way and the impacts of coastal inundation of our communities. In summary, we must dramatically change the way we do transport and do so urgently. For me, this also has a very personal aspect. I've shown this to council before. Apologies if you, like I, get PTSD from seeing this. This is me on the ground after an accident on unsafe cycle infrastructure. They are the 4 vertebrae on the right that were broken. That is my spinal cord just to the right. We must make it safe to do the right thing. So, in terms of both proposals in front of you today, our plea would be, please do it well, do it quickly, and do more, because we cannot afford not to. I would also add a comment that as I talk to people around the country, eyes are on Wellington for your leadership in this space. And I endorse both the courage and the leadership the council is showing in tackling these issues of transport and its impact on health in the city. Thank you.
Thank you. We do have a couple of questions, and we've allowed another 5 minutes because there were 2 of you, so we can have questions. So, Tony, Councillor Randall.
Thank you, and thanks for bringing this health view to the debate. I want to draw on your own, knowledge, I guess, in terms of just asking 3 questions. One is, what are the percentage of people so what percentage of people do you think could cycle, and of that percentage, what, in your experience, is the percentage that, given the opportunity of a good cycleway, would cycle?
Marion, do you have anything you want to comment on that? And then I've got a quick comment.
I think the main thing, the question, how many people could cycle? Well, the answer to that, of course, is anyone who's able-bodied and has a bike, and indeed many people who are not able-bodied, if they have the right bike, can cycle. So that's not really there's probably more nuance to that question in terms of how many people we need cycling in Wellington to make a difference to health outcomes. We probably need to shift our current share down in the low, single figure percentages up to 20, 40%. And we know this is achievable from other major cities and cities with way worse climates than we have and potentially worse topography. Any extra additional support we can get for getting people onto bicycles, or, I mean, bicycle isn't the only way. You know, we want people walking, we want them walking to the bus stop, anything that gets them out of their private car, particularly for commuting. Commuting makes the biggest difference, and those utility journeys to school, to the shops, to work, the ones that you do every day, those are the ones that make you healthier.
I would add, in terms of what's the potential, your officers would be able to point you to evidence from Copenhagen, from Vancouver, from numerous North European cities, of cities that are, approaching 20% mode share by cycling, even in the snow. So,
yeah. Oh, we've got quite a few questions.
Just one quick follow-up, if I can.
Can we come back to,
okay,
sorry,
sure.
Councillor Randall, because there's actually a few. Councillor Winera.
Tēnā koe te tākata. Kanui ki mihi I korerorero mai I tō kauhau. Tēnā koe. Hey, in your speech, you mentioned the various health benefits that can be acquired by a mode shift towards bicycling. Do you see a similar mode shift to similar health benefits in a mode shift to walking as well, and the promotion of walking infrastructure?
I'll answer that for us both, Marion. Yes, walking counts. We probably have better international evidence for cycling, and a little bit depends on how far you need to go, because people will cycle 5 or 6 kilometres, they won't walk 5 or 6 kilometres, so a lot depends locally on your distance. But active transport, walking and cycling, both thumbs up.
Great. And Pāenga-whāwhā Holden.
Kia ora, thank you for that. Just following on from the health stats, do you have any, I mean, they're quite amazing, but I'm just wondering how much cycling do you need to do to get that percentage lift in health? Is it commuting? Is it just now and again? What do you have any kind of intel on that?
Marion, do you want to go?
I think the major study, which was the one that David presented today, shows commuting is the thing that makes the biggest difference. So and that's because it's the thing you do every day. The best exercise is the thing you actually do, rather than the thing you think you might do, or that you do occasionally, or that you do on weekends. So commuting is gold, whether, as I say, that's to your school or around your local community or into work and back. It probably doesn't have to be every day, but most days is better than occasionally.
Great, thank you.
And e-bikes are just as good as manual bikes, because again, it's the exercise you do that matters.
Thanks.
Thank you for that, and we can come back to a quick one from you, Councillor Randall. Very quick though.
Yes. No, just wanted to note, given the number of people who really won't have the option to cycle. Is there a concern, or is there a negative impact on those, on reducing access to those who really need to drive, like families, elderly people, things like that?
There will always be people who need to drive, and good on them. And that's important. We're talking about choice, but at the moment, I don't have a choice to cycle safely. And my fractured vertebrae are testament to that. What I would say is that you face conflict over car parks, and my parting comment to you would be to remember, is it car parks or cancer? The choice is yours.
Thank you for that. Right, and thank you also, Marion. That's been useful information. We're going to move on now to, we're jumping a wee bit, but we'll come back. I believe Lucy Stewart's on the line. Is that right? Or in the room? Online.
Yes.
Thank you, Lucy.
Online.
Are you happy to go now?
Yes, I'm happy to go now.
Thank you.
Kia ora everyone. So my name's Lucy Stewart. I live in Wadestown with my family. I have a 7-week-old baby. Apologies if he makes some noise. So my concern in submitting on this is that living in Wadestown, I travel through and to Thorndon, basically every time I want to go into town, and to Thorndon, mostly to Parliament and the Royal Society professionally. I travel through Thorndon on bus, as a driver, as a cyclist, as a pedestrian, on a moped. Pretty much the only way I don't is by e-scooter because they terrify me. So I have a really strong interest in this cycleway and in the cycleway going ahead. In general, I strongly support it. The thing I would like to be considered, which is not happening as far as I can tell, is lowering the speed limits on Mulgrave, Murphy and Molesworth Streets, ideally to 30 kilometres an hour. That's not part of the current proposal. The reason for this is that my experience kind of moving through there, but also visiting there, and also having gone to school at Queen Margaret and, being a school student walking up Molesworth Street to get to school, is it's kind of a community space, which unfortunately happens to have a motorway on and off ramp going through it. And the greatest danger is posed by people in motor vehicles, largely couriers, but not exclusively, who treat it exclusively as a motorway on and off ramp and are basically just really annoyed that anyone else is using it or trying to travel through and around the area. I've had some really close runs on a bike and as a pedestrian with people doing this. And so I'm really concerned that there's basically some way for that traffic to be slowed and it to be clear that while yes, this is a way you get to the motorway where you can go very fast, which I do sometimes, I drive through there to get to the motorway, that's not the main purpose of the area, and that it's safe for people using all those other modes of transport. The cycleways are going to go a long way to making it a lot more safe for cyclists. That's great. I will also note I fully understand why the design is happening with the dog leg onto Molesworth Street in terms of connecting up with the rest of the cycle network. I noted in the submissions a lot of people don't seem to have fully grokked why that's happening, but that as a cyclist that does make sense to me, even though it's not the way I personally go right now where there's no cycleway. But as someone who uses that area in other modes, and particularly as a pedestrian, I think there can be more to be done to make it more safe for that and for people moving around the area, and lowering the speed limit would be a really good contribution to that. I do know this may end up happening as part of the school speed limit changes, which we'll be going through. But I just wanted to emphasise, I think that should happen as fast as possible and be considered as soon as possible. Thank you.
Thank you, Lucy. Now we do have a question from Councillor Paul.
I was just going to ask, were you aware of the safer school speeds that we're doing next week? But
yes,
you are aware, so that's awesome. So we're considering that on Thursday next week. Kia ora, thank you for your submission.
Great. Thank you.
And one more from Councillor McNulty.
Kia ora, Lucy. Hope you're well. When Alexander's older, would you consider riding down this way in terms of taking him on a bike as well, if it was protected and safe?
Yeah, I didn't mention that, but absolutely. Right now, I would not. But he will not be old enough to go on a bike until he's a year old. But once he is old enough, when there's a protected cycleway, I would feel safe to do that and to go into town with him on a bike, and I wouldn't right now.
Awesome, thank you.
Okay, well, thank you, Lucy. I don't see any more questions, but that's very useful. Thank you very much. Now, I think we've actually waiting on a few people, or we may have had a few people cancel. So are you suggesting we take a wee adjournment? We don't have any more people. Okay, so I can't even say when we'll adjourn to.
We could take afternoon tea now, because until Darren gets here.
Okay, so the suggestion is that actually, if you want to, we can have a cup of tea and take afternoon tea now, and then we've got somebody booked to come at 2:25, so that's actually quite a long little gap for us. But yeah, we'll say half an hour, 2:25, and hopefully, if we need to fit some more people in, it'll all kind of work out. But can you be back promptly at 2:25? Thanks.
Absolutely.
Away you go.
Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. Good afternoon. Thank you for having me speak on the impact of proposed changes to Coot Street as proposed by the Wellington City Council. Just before I go into my submission, I would like to make first a clarification. I have over here a copy of the letter that has been written by the principal of Rongotai College, who, like me, does not support any changes to Coot Street as it is. Now, in that letter, the principal of Rongotai College has made it quite clear that they do not support the proposed changes to Coot Street. Somebody has been going around saying that the college does support it. It does not support it. And I do not support it either. Now, the reasons why I do not support any changes to Coot Street are as follows. The proposed changes, first of all, means that the parking in front of Rongotai College, where I teach and where I've been teaching for 35 years now, and the kindergarten, which is next door to my house, will be removed. This is far from what people would want or the parents would want. This is not in the best interest of either the students or the parents who come to either drop them or pick them up, especially with the kindergarten school just right next door. I think for safety reasons and for the other reasons, people would want to park in front of the school, go inside the school, pick up the children, and go away. I don't think having a cycle lane over there and removing parking space for people is in the best interest of public at large. This should also mean that the residents and the visitors will have to look for parking space and would end up parking in Rongotai College parking space, which would mean that the staff and students and visitors to the school will not have parking space for themselves. Most of and this will also endanger the students with the extra traffic flow in and out of the school, as well as the movement of the buses over there. I don't know how many of you have been to Coot Street recently, but in the last 35 years, the traffic has increased more than 20-fold. We have got heavy trucks turning from Selig Street into Coot Street, either going towards Peck and Save or going towards Bunning. Under such circumstances, where we've got heavy traffic flow, along with all the other cars and the parents, I don't think it is sensible at all to change Coot Street into a cyclist lane. Now, going ahead with the changes will also mean that you will have to narrow the street. This is not in the best interest of heavy traffic, which have to keep moving to and fro. If the cyclists at all are coming from Broadway and are coming towards Coot Street, they can very well take a turn, right turn into Bridge Street, go into Rongotai Road, which is already having cyclist lanes over there, and move forward from there. Or if they want, they can take a left turn near Tirangi Road roundabout, go into the Leone Gill pathway and take that cyclist lane over there. I don't understand why we have to change entire Kilburnie into cyclist lanes. The next thing is that the fish and chip shop, which is opposite my house over here. The poor guy has just been surviving. People park there, rightfully so, go and order their fish and chips and go from there. If you have cyclist lanes over there, we're going to remove parking space. So how is this person supposed to survive? As it is, business is not very good, as you all would understand. So I think we're doing a disfavor to this particular person who's got his fish and chips shop right in front over there and who's doing a service to the people, not only of Coot Street, but of Kilburnie as a whole. I think that when I went for a walk around Coot Street from Kipiti Street towards the airport in, the people living over here in the houses and who own houses like me are now getting old. Getting old means that you've got old people visiting you, which means that these people would rather park in front of the houses that they're visiting, safe and sound, and go away from there. If you want to introduce cyclist lanes over there, you're getting rid of the parking space over there, and that means that the old people will no longer be able to find a parking space anywhere on Coot Street, on this side of the of Coot Street, where they can safely park, have their visitation, and go back. As a landlord, as a property owner, I would want my space in front of my house to be left for my visitors or any people who are coming there, not turned into a cyclist lane. like I said in my submission, that if the cyclists do want to use lanes, there are 2 lanes, one on Rogotai Road and the other one on the Leone Gill pathway, they can very well and safely use. Using of cyclist lane in Cook Street with the heavy traffic, I don't think is sensible, nor is it safe for anybody, neither the cyclist nor the public. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, for giving me patient hearing. I'm now willing to answer any questions that anybody has.
We have run out of time, but I'm going to ask you just a quick one. So thank you for that viewpoint. It's really useful for us to hear. Dinesh, do you have off-street car parking yourself? Do you have somewhere to park your car off the street?
Yes, I do.
How many can you park off the street?
I can park 2.
2. And how many of your neighbours do you think have off-street parking?
I'll have to count. They are. The next door neighbour, he is parking his car, 2 cars in front. Is parking on the street.
So he has no off-street?
He is, but he's still parking 2 there. There's somebody living in the back.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you very much. You have highlighted quite an issue that we do need to be aware of. So thank you. It's really appreciated. So I think we've run out of time. We've now got, I think, Rosie online. Would that be right?
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Hi, Rosie. You have. Are you willing to speak to us a little bit early?
Yes, yeah,
Good.
that's totally fine.
So you've got 5 minutes, and that needs to include questions, if you wish questions. So,
Yep. No, that's
over
great.
to you.
Thank you. So, kia ora, ko Rosie mō toko ingoa. I'm here today mainly to talk about the Onapu Road section of the Kilburnie Connections proposal. I reside at 112 Onapu Road and have done for about the last 5 years. I want to start off by saying that I'm super pro cycling, and I'd love to have a safe city for everyone to be able to bike around. I have 3 young children, and I'd love to see Lyle Bay be a much safer place. Firstly, I think the proposed changes around turning out of Pack and Save and in and out of Countdown, we need to just do them now. I don't think there needs to be consultation. Everyone, like that intersection is a nightmare. And I think the changes that you've proposed there are a no-brainer. And the sooner we can do them, the better. It'll have an immediate impact, not only on bike safety, but traffic in that area as well. So that was my first point. For the changes to Onapu Road from Leone Gill down to Lyle Parade, the documents state that 90% of properties in this section have off-street parking. I'm not disputing that percentage. What I'm disputing is how many people actually can use their off-street parking. So I don't know if you're aware of the houses in this area, but we're all living in sort of old villas that were built in the 1900s. And the garages that were built there are tiny. So the amount of people that actually use their off-street parking in that section, I would say, is a lot less than 90%. And I think it's something that you need to take into consideration when you're thinking about removing parking. I know it also says in the documents that there were spare parks when people came and looked, but it's not good enough to just come and survey and make assumptions based on what you can see. I would really encourage you to talk to the residents of Onapu Road about how they actually utilise that off-street parking, because most people just use it as sheds. And those tiny garages can be great parking for e-bikes, so I'm all for that. But I'm also really worried about the people who need parks outside their house. Like 2 down from us, there's a family and they have a disabled child who they take walking every day. They have people coming to take her in a wheelchair. And if they can't access that right outside their house, it's just such a big issue for them. And I'm sure there's others on the street as well. So I really think there's an accessibility issue in terms of our disabled community as well. So it's something to think about when you're removing car parks. And I know you're not removing them on our side of the street, but it will still impact us because people from the other side of the street will park on our side. And I guess the other sort of point of view I wanted to put into in the 5 years that we've lived on Onapu Road, we have been biking and scooting on the footpath, and we've only encountered sort of a car coming across the footpath into an off-street park I think once or twice in that 5 years. That's how little people use their off-street parking on Onupu Road. And so my proposal, I guess, that I'm putting forward is that instead of putting the bike lanes on the road, I really think we could try with a trial of the shared pathway model like Oriental Bay on the footpath. Because people aren't turning in and out of their driveways much, and I think that could be surveyed. It could be the safest option for Onupu Road, is to have that shared bike path, and certainly talking to cyclists who use the bike paths in Wellington. The best ones are around Oriental Bay, and they're the shared footpath model, and that's what all the cyclists like. I also tried to talk to a lot of cyclists in Lau Bay before talking to you all today, and to be honest, they're really confused. They don't ever use Onupu Road, and they don't want Onupu Road to be a main cycleway. And I think they have a point. You know, why are we forcing cyclists onto roads that we know are car heavy and public transport heavy? Onupu Road should be used for public transport, most definitely. But we don't need to put our cyclists there as well. We've got some great parallel roads in Lau Bay that could be used for cyclists. And why don't we keep them separate from the heavy traffic? It's just something to consider, I guess. So those are my main points. And then also, I think what's missing in the plan currently is you've got connections on the airport side of Leone Gill, but not the other end. What happens when you get to the other end of Leone Gill? How do we connect that end of Leone Gill to the great cycleway?
Rosie, I will need to ask you just to make the final point. Yeah, keep going, but
Sorry.
just if you can wrap up. Yeah.
How can we connect Leone Gill to the great cycleway that you've got going up Childers Terrace? Currently, bikers have to come off Leone Gill and they just ride on the road there, and it's not that safe. So, so my final plea is take time to listen. Don't waste money on something that cyclists aren't going to use and people aren't going to be happy with. Yeah, thank you.
That was a very clear submission that you've obviously thought about heaps. So I live locally and I could really tell you'd thought about that. So thank you very much. That's really useful information for us to consider. Thank you. I wish we had more time for questions, but we have run out of time.
Sorry, I didn't think I'd be that long.
Yeah. Thank you.
Cool. Thank you.
So who do we have next? Right, well, having said that, I suppose we need to be consistent, but we actually do have a gap again until 3 o'clock. So, right, so we will come back at 3. for being so patient with the adjustments we've had to make. Now, I think we have got Martin in the room. Is that right? Martin, we are all ears and ready to hear you. You do have 5 minutes. Everyone's getting 5 minutes today. So it's a bit of a race, but if you want to allow time for questions, that's included in the 5 minutes.
Is it? Right.
Yeah.
I've timed it. It's just under 5 minutes.
Okay.
Okay, thank you very much, Kia ora. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to express my concerns about the Thorndon connections here this afternoon. I'd like to spend the 5 minutes informing you about the impact of just one aspect of the proposals. Specifically on your letter, the proposal changing Kate Shepherd Place to one-way towards Mulgrave Street to reduce the conflict with two-way back connections, one of the bullet points on the other side of the flyer that I think we all got. The proposal, 6th of March 23, states that, the proposal will remove the right turn out of Kate Shepherd Place. It doesn't say this specifically, but I would like to just make it really clear what this proposal will do and how it will affect me. It will remove the right turn out of Kate Shepherd Place and onto Molesworth Street. It's going to make me go down the other way towards the other street from Murphy, what do they call it? Mulgrave Street, thank you. The proposal states that the improvements we're looking to make will make it easier for people to get around Thorndon in low carbon ways, it's all written on here, whether visiting Tinakori Village, our parliamentary precinct, primary school, high schools, Victoria University of Wellington campuses, or the many large government employers around there. And also that these improvements will enhance the walkability of Thorndon, end of quote. Well, I actually live right in the centre of Thorndon. In fact, if you could go to the very middle of this rectangular map, that's where I live, right in the middle of there. And I believe that Thorndon already has excellent walkability, as you've called it here. Indeed, I can, and I often do, walk just a few minutes to get to any of the places I've just mentioned. I, along with my wife and our autistic adult daughter, we live in one of the 65 flats that go to make up the Kate Shepherd apartments on Molesworth Street. If you exit or enter the apartments on foot, you will enter on Molesworth Street, but if you enter or exit in a vehicle, you enter and exit on Kate Shepherd Place. So what's going to happen is I usually turn right and go to the many places I go to during the week by turning right and onto Molesworth Street, and then I'm going to be asked to now turn left and go down to the other end. Anyway, I live in one of the 6. And on consideration, I believe that the proposal to change Kate Shepherd Place to one-way will be detrimental to the people who actually live there, not just myself, but to everybody who lives in the Kate Shepherd apartments. Indeed, if this proposal is approved, then our quality of life, my family in particular, it's going to be considerably worse than it is now. Kate Shepherd residents in the 65 apartments, there's 3 of us in our apartment, we're being given scant regard from these improvements, as they're called, but they're not approving. This one in particular is not improving our quality of life. We're going to suffer significant consequences from no longer being able to turn right onto Molesworth Street. Instead, we're going to be forced out of the little-used other end of Kate Shepherd Place, where it dips steeply down to the right and tapers to just 1 car width, with no pavements on either side of that car width. It's a very narrow, funneled exit going out of the other end of Kate Shepherd Place. Before it comes out to an abrupt halt. You'd reach that junction if you were driving out of there at the end of Mulgrave Street, sideways on, and at an acute angle. You'd then have to cross a bus lane and then turn sharply right into traffic lights, which are right there at the side of you as you're coming along adjacent to it. Sharply into the traffic lights. And this is precisely why this way out of Kate Shepherd's Place is actually so little used. I don't know if any surveys have been done, traffic coming out of Kate Shepherd Place onto Mulgrave Street, but very few cars actually currently exit that way. And that's because it's such a very dangerous juncture. I've been involved in several very near misses in the years I've been living there, trying to get out of that Kate Shepherd Place. The one-way system, if you do go that way, it continues down Featherstone Street, as a left turn going onto Thorndon Quay is not permissible. We cannot drive directly across 3 lanes in front of the vehicles and then turn left onto Thorndon Quay. We have to go down towards towards Featherstone Street. And there's another set of traffic lights at the railway station on your left-hand side, a second set of traffic lights there. Up to that point, it's always one way. So it's not just one way down Kate Shepherd Place. The one-way system continues around and moving away from Kate Shepherd Place and I'm moving away from Molesworth Street at that juncture as well.
Martin, just to say, we will need you to make your final points.
Okay.
Yeah, your 5 minutes is up.
Being forced further south into an even more congested part of the city is the only option driving out that way. Incidentally, there's a new multi-storey construction project just getting underway at the far end of Kate Shepherd Place. And it's a single-lane juncture. The construction project, I believe, is lasting 3 years, I've been told, and it already gets regularly blocked. The full road gets blocked while they unload construction materials from there. Over a two-week period from 27th of March to the 9th of April, I documented each of my car journeys leaving Kate Shepherd Apartments. These involve mostly work. I'm semi-retired. I do relief work 2-3 days a week, leaving on a morning at short notice, and I usually work at Onslow College and at Montessori School in Nainai. I'm also a beekeeper. I've got beehives all over Wellington City. I don't know how many exactly, 40 or so, places like the Botanic Gardens and Zealandia and so on. And I look after these. And I've also got some in the cathedral, just across the road from me, Wellington Cathedral, and I can walk across to the cathedral, but all the other sites I visit, I have to visit in my car with a car bootload of gear. I can't go on public transport. For all of these, as well as grocery trips for myself and a neighbour, a couple of times a week and weekend hikes, all of the journeys I make are coming out of Kate Shepherd Place and turning right onto Molesworth Street. I have only exited Kate Shepherd Place onto Mulgrave Street once this year. I was doing it over the 2-week period, didn't do it. I looked back and I could only find one time when I came out of there.
Martin, I'm sorry, but I am going to have to ask you to make your very last comment.
Right, basically it involves me resulting in 2 more hours a week extra driving than what I'd be doing now. I'd be on the road for 2 hours longer, and there'd be a greater consumption of petrol, and it would also create worsening congestion in the heart of the city and contribute to more emissions. This is one of the consequences for me, probably all of the other 65 apartments, and that's just one driver, me. All of the others would be the same. Finally, last sentence, there has to be other ways of accommodating cyclists without making life so much more difficult for the residents of Kate Shepherd Apartments. Now, Mihi, thank you for your time.
Thank you very much, Martin. We've certainly heard that, your points. Thank you.
Thank you.
Sorry, we had to keep it so short. Right. We're going to ask, is it Amjad? Amjad, are you online?
Yep.
Yes.
Sorry, I was just unmuting there. Amjad's good.
Well, welcome, and you have 5 minutes, which does go by very, very
Cool.
quickly.
Yeah, I'm sure it does.
It does.
Cool. Thank you, everyone, for listening to my talk now. So this is about the Kilburney connections. I live at 146 Honeyboo Road, which is right next to Elements, if any of you guys have been. If you could flip to the next slide, please. So obviously, you know, the flyers and stuff went out, and I've read the website a few times. There's a lot of good stuff there, like, you know, Kilburney Ways. Reduced speed limit is great, all for that. The restricted turning in a couple of places is brilliant. Do you mean the pack and save stuff? I've been hoping someone would come up with that idea for years. I catch the bus to work every day. The removal of some of those bus stops is stuff I've already thought of, just like why the 2 bus stops so close together. It's kind of a bit insane. So again, some good stuff there. If I could flip to the next one, please. Me and my family, so we live there. We love our biking. You know, we bike a lot. There's a couple of pictures there. We've been doing it for a long time. Go away on, you know, little missions out. So it's not like we don't like a good bus lane. My boy, he bikes to school every day to eBiz. My daughter's not quite at that point yet, but when she goes eBiz, I'll be pushing for that as well. And I do want them to be safe. Do you know what I mean? I definitely do. I definitely see the benefit in having a bike lane. But if you can flip to the next one. It's at a cost. Do you know what I mean? Like, we're basically saying we can't park our car, pretty much. So we live at home. We've got one car between us. There's 4 of us in the house. Partner wants another one. I'm a bit anti it, if I'm brutally honest. I don't like having 2 cars between 2 of us. The house that we live in is from 1910, 1920. The garage was built in 1950. There's no way you can fit a modern car in there. I've tried, and I can get the car in, but I can't get out of the car. So, you know, unfortunately, I'm a bit unlucky in that I can't actually park off the road. So as per developments around, there's basically everyone's building building houses in the area, and it's only going to get worse. There's an apartment block across the road from us that have only just come up, and we've got some people in there. That's one house that turned into 4 townhouses. So if that's like 4, 5, 6 cars, maybe even 8. There's talk of the bus station, which is on Onipu Road, being torn down and turned into flats. So who knows how many cars that's going to generate if that's the case. Things are only going to get worse. People are going to be, everyone's moving towards electric cars. It's worrying me at the moment. I've got nowhere to park my electric car if I ever buy one and plug it in, because I haven't got a garage. Having a bike lane in between my house and the road, which is where I'm going to park, I'm not even sure how I'm going to even do that. If you flip to the next one. I just realised I should have added a footer, but anyway, when you're even down the bottom. So this is my house on the left. It's the one with the green garage. My car's that black Honda there. And the first picture is, both of these pictures are from Tuesday 28, 7 a.m. So this is when my boy goes to school, when he's got his extra swimming thing. This is full. Do you know what I mean? Like the road's full, and you can even see a car pulling out one of the side roads. It's busy. There's people there. And you can see I've got 4 cars in that little area between myself. I'm parked halfway across my garage, and this is before other people have kind of gone to work potentially. Some have, some haven't. So maybe there's that, but it's full, and this is on a Tuesday morning. The new build across the road, which you can just about see, is the brown house on the right. They basically, like I said, they've created 4 instances there, 4 townhouses, of which only 2 of them are populated at the moment. The other 2 are being completed. So sooner or later, we're going to get a few extra cars there. If you could flip to the next, please. This is the same thing. This was Good Friday at 4:45 in the afternoon. In theory, people have gone on holiday. People have gone away for long weekend. But we're still busy. I didn't even get to park outside my house on this occasion. I got parked in front of my neighbours. We're comfy about that. Elements, the cafe, is shut. It's long weekend. It's still busy. It's still got loads of cars everywhere. And again, if you look ahead, we're just outside my house. There's actually 3 cars parked there, but whoever it is, fair enough, decided not to park across my garage. So that's kind of nice. Elements Cafe, busy cafe, very good. If any of you guys in the area, I recommend it. They do very nice stuff. Saturday, Sunday, lunchtimes, they're busy time. I don't get a park. Do you mean I just kind of accepted that? I've been there 10 years. I just don't get a park. I'll be down Apu Crescent. I'll be around the corner of Far Street. I can take that. I can take that on the chin. It's like, 1 or 2 days. If I go out midday. So I'm not averse to parking on the side streets. It's just every day, that would be a different story. So flip to the next slide, please. So, I'm sorry, if you go back one.
We have run out of time, so if I can just ask you to make your last points.
Okay, cool. Actually, flip to the next slide then. I think that's the last one. Just briefly on the last one, there's an idea of having those car parks outside my house for an hour. If any of you go to Elements and have lunch, you're not going to have lunch in an hour. It's impossible. I don't know how anyone expects to do that. Overall, I'm quite supportive of speed limits coming down. I do really like the one-way turns. I do love my biking, and I'm up for a bike lane. But to reduce the parking and remove parking on one side of the road, the complete road, is kind of bonkers. You're not thinking about the future. There's going to be more houses in the area. There's going to be more cars in the area. People still need to park. If we do this now, we're just going to have to rip it up again in like 5-10 years, which is going to be another expensive cost. So from my point of view, the immediate parks outside my house is a complete nightmare, and the reduced parking across the entire road, which is quite a long road, is the thing that's kind of causing me the most worry out of all this.
Thank you, and I'm really sorry we don't have time for questions, but you've made some really clear points and the photographs were really helpful for us to understand it too. So thank you, Amjad. You're welcome to stay, by the way, if you'd like to hear what other people have got to say as well.
Cool. Thank you.
Thank you again. Right. So I think we've got Mike, is that right, in the room? Yes, Mike. Can I welcome you to the table or the podium, whatever you prefer?
Sure. Hear me okay?
We can indeed.
Right. Far away. Get that clock moving. I'm going to be fairly brief. I am a resident of Lowell Parade. I live at number 8 Lowell Parade, which is about halfway between the junction with Onipu and the junction with Tarangi Road. And the point first of all, I want to say that I support the changes. I support, in general, the Kilburnie Connections proposals. I think they're very good, they're very progressive, and they take account of changing lifestyles and changing transport modes, etc. So I want to say congratulations to the council for putting up that plan. I think it's the way to the future, and I think it's got a lot more benefits than not. There's just a couple of points I want to make around safety. The Lowell Bay has become, in recent times, increasingly a destination. It's got a lot of new retail amenities. There's a new retail block about to open, actually, on the corner of Kingsford Smith and Lowell Parade, which will bring even more shoppers to the area. It's got the pub, of course, the Parrot Dog. There's a pop-up fish and chip shop in Kingsford Smith Street as well. So the volume of foot traffic has become a lot greater in that area, and invariably those people are coming from the beachfront or from Lowell Parade, and often from the other side of the beach side of Lowell Parade. And I think what is lacking is another pedestrian crossing near Kingsford Smith Street. From my townhouse at number 8, I've seen people sort of doing wild dashes across the street. I've seen women pushing strollers and having to move very quickly to get across the street and up across the curb as traffic approaches. And I just think we could do with one more, excuse me, pedestrian crossing, as I say, very close to Kingsford Smith Street. There is a pedestrian crossing down towards Onipu Road. I think it would probably be outside roughly number 20 or 25 or 24, I should say, Lowell Parade. But there's a need for one further to the east towards the airport. The other point is I want to make is around the speed limit on Lowell Parade. I think traffic moves far too quickly there for the volumes of people who are in the area and looking to cross that road. And I think there should be serious consideration of a 30k limit all the way along Lowell Parade. Now, forgive me if there is already a speed limit on parts of that parade, but I don't think there is. But I think consideration should be given to a 30k limit along there, simply because of the volumes of people who are trying to get across that road and to the beach. Look, that's pretty much me. So look at that. I'm going to break the 3-minute barrier. So
well, wonderful. We might even have time for some questions.
Exactly. I was just going to say I'm happy to answer any questions.
I'll ask you one. What's your response to the people who are concerned about losing car parks? And, would you have any helpful suggestions in that regard?
Look, I'm sympathetic to that. I'm a car user myself, but I'm also an e-biker and a pedestrian increasingly, and I have a garage, so I don't have an issue with parking at my place. But yeah, look, I do have some sympathy for them. I don't know what the answer is. I don't think the taxpayer or ratepayer should be having to sort of fund parking areas for people who choose to be vehicle owners. Look, it's not unusual in larger cities for people to have to park some way from their house. I spent the Easter weekend in Melbourne, and I visited a niece of mine, and she was telling me that the nearest park to their place is close to 1 kilometre away. And she said that's just the norm when you live in a city now like Melbourne or Sydney. And I think increasingly that sort of, that situation is coming to our cities as well. That as we intensify our urban development, there's not going to be enough car parks, or we're certainly not going to have the luxury of car parks outside our houses. Now, as I say, I'm speaking as somebody who doesn't have the problem, but I think it's just the sort of reality of the changing nature of our cities that luxury is increasingly disappearing in New Zealand.
Other questions from anyone? No? Well, thank you very much, Mike. You've left us with a little tiny bit of spare time, which is very nice. Thank you. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you very much for the chance to speak.
Thank you. So we do have Vicky from Focus Osteopathy. Vicky, we're a little bit out of kilter because we've had cancellations and people changing their times. So appreciative of you coming early.
Thank you. I don't do public speaking, so I'm going to read off a piece of paper.
Yeah. There is 5 minutes and it does go very quickly.
Exactly. So I'm Vicky from Focus Osteopathy. I work on Molesworth Street. We've got two other practitioners, and we're a health business, and we help people recover from injuries and deal with musculoskeletal conditions. And we've been there for 14 years. While I probably will agree with a number of points that may have been raised previously, my focus is going to be on accessibility needs for visitors to the Thorndon region. Firstly, I'd like to mention that I was quite disappointed about Council's process around consultation with local businesses. We didn't hear about it at all, apart from when I walked across the road into the New World. So I would like that to be improved to start out with. I'd like to make you aware of the many health-related small businesses in the Molesworth Street area whose clients will be impacted by the proposed changes, such as ourselves, the speech-language therapists, the Skin Diagnostic Clinic, Parent Help Counselling Services, the Stroke Foundation, and 2 pharmacies and the Thorndon Medical Centre. Many of our clients have accessibility and mobility needs and come from a broad range of socioeconomic backgrounds. With the proposed removal of the bus stop along Molesworth Street, directly outside 95 Molesworth Street, as well as the one at the Cathedral, this will impact the ability to access healthcare that they require. While it is noted that there is a gesture to assist with disability car parks, this is not helpful for individuals with mobility issues that don't qualify for these parks. With the removal of both the bus stops on Molesworth Street and the majority of the parking, clients are then limited to walking, biking, or using taxis or Ubers. As an example, imagine yourself suffering from an episode of lower back pain where every step is painful for you to take. There's no bus close by to where your health practitioner is located, and you find yourself having to walk up Molesworth Street. While the gradient wouldn't normally be an issue, it seems like a very steep climb up a hill with back pain, and it's raining and there's no cover for you. It's pretty much impossible when you're suffering with lower back pain to be able to walk up a street like that, or with a knee injury or an ankle injury. Alternatively, you could bike, but your body winces at the idea of that. You decide you will drive, only to find there's only a few car parks close by, but they're allocated for car share rides or are already full, and the bus stop is not there. So what do you do? The proposal of council to remove the bus stops affects access to healthcare, which impacts on people's quality of life. The proposed changes suggest that the Thorndon area is a thoroughfare and not a place to stop, visit or do business in. The current plan significantly marginalises those who have mobility and disability conditions and those who cannot afford to use taxis, Ubers, bikes or car share options. It affects people's access to healthcare. The streets in Thorndon are heavily populated with coupon parking, which is taken up by commuters. I note that one of council's objectives in the proposed transport changes is to reduce emissions for road transport. Yet, instead of addressing the hundreds of commuters in the Thorndon region, This current plan proposes to reduce bus access to the area and remove short-term metered parking for those who are visiting the area for business or service needs. The workers in the area are the commuters. They're the people driving in from outside of Wellington. They're the portion of the population that council should be targeting with the use of public transport. Molesworth Street has always been a difficult and sometimes dangerous stretch of road to cross as a pedestrian. I see that most days with school students, ministry workers and elderly trying to cross the road. Adding a bike lane to the mix without consideration of speed restrictions would increase the risk on this road. When you're talking about reducing transport emissions, wouldn't it be prudent to reduce lanes of traffic lanes on this stretch of road so that there is a single lane of traffic and a bike lane with a reduced speed limit of 30 k's, which would make it safer and more accessible for everybody? For my clients and other visitors in this area of Molesworth Street, I would like 3 things to be considered and ultimately implemented. The first being that the bus stop outside 95 Molesworth Street, outside the New World, remain. The second is that the speed limit on Molesworth Street be reduced to 30 k's. And the third is that the side streets off Molesworth and Murphy Street, such as Hawksone Street, have the coupon parking removed and that short-term metered parking is put in place so that people can actually access the businesses around the region.
Thank you. Look, I will allow an extra question. And I think I'll actually let Councillor Calvert, because she's a committee member, ask the question.
Look, if the council didn't make any changes, what do you think would be the impact? I know we've heard about your customers getting to your business, but what do you think the impact will be on you as a business owner or other business owners? What will likely happen?
If you don't, or if you do?
If we don't. If we stick to what's being proposed.
As a business, I think that it will still allow accessibility. I do think there needs to be changes on that stretch of road, absolutely. I have no issues with bike lanes. But yeah, I don't imagine that if you don't change anything, there's going to be much difference other than the continued issue around people being able to cross that stretch of road. It's really unsafe from a visual perspective, trying to get across the road you can't see either way.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
So to summarise, you were supportive of some of it, but you've got 3 very important points you wanted to make to us. Right, thank you. Okay, thank you for that. We will move on to Stephen. Now, Stephen,
I was just checking I was the right Stephen.
Yeah. Now, Stephen, I've actually decided to be a little bit more generous with your time because I recognise that you are addressing a Thorndon issue and a Kilbirnie issue, and they're actually quite different.
Yes,
so
that's right. Thank you for that.
I had some sympathy with granting you an extra amount of time.
Thank you. Well, hopefully I can just take 5 minutes in terms of an overview, and that might leave room for any questions at the end. So thank you for the opportunity. I'm presenting, Stephen Quinn is my name, and I'm presenting on behalf of Foodstuffs North Island Limited. They own the Thorndon New World and the Pack and Save Kilbirnie. I should start by saying that Foodstuffs is not opposed to cycleways, and in fact quite the opposite. But ultimately the thrust of the submission is what it's seeking is an efficient and safe supermarket operation. So in terms of Thorndon New World, the primary change that we're seeking is to request that the proposed cycle lane is located on the left-hand side of the road as you go up, for example, in terms of Molesworth Street, rather than the current proposed right-hand side. And such is the significance of this issue for Foodstuffs and its operation that if we can't get to the point where that's changed, I suppose the only option as a statement of fact that Foodstuffs has got is to look to its legal remedies. So what we're actually seeking and what we're requesting this committee to do is to place the process on hold and for a review to be undertaken in terms of what we say is the proper traffic analysis that's required in terms of the correct side of the road that the cycleway goes on. So it's not about whether there's not a cycleway, yes or no, it's just where it's located within the road corridor. And that process we request would involve the traffic engineers on behalf of Foodstuffs. Now, to the extent that that's considered to be quite a significant ask, I've turned my mind to, well, why would you do that? And to me, there are probably 3 red flags that arise in terms of this process. The first red flag number 1, is that there's been no consultation that's occurred with Foodstuffs. Foodstuffs is the owner of what is the largest and the highest traffic generating business on the proposed cycle route, and in that respect probably the most affected. The consultation that occurred was with the store owner. It's effectively the difference between an owner and a tenant. The store owner is the tenant, he's a grocer, he doesn't have the access to traffic expertise, planning expertise, legal expertise to be able to have input. Doesn't have the same expertise that Foodstuffs has as the owner of the site. And also the consultation was superficial in the sense it was an informed approach. It wasn't a consultation involving experts and the need to go through. But there's no separation between the operator and the owner here. Foodstuffs and the operator ultimately are supporting the same submission and addressing the same points today. Red flag 2, there's no proper traffic options analysis that's been taken of the pros and cons and the significance of left-hand side versus right-hand side. It appears that the left-hand side option was discounted early on with very little, and we say inadequate, expert traffic analysis. And we had the benefit of a meeting earlier this week, and we thank officers for that, and they've confirmed what that input was, and frankly it's limited to less than a page. It's very, very, very short. And we say that there's a significant red flag in terms of the adequacy of that. Third red flag is that we say the traffic analysis that was relied on is wrong in terms of its focus. The numbers relied on, as I say, were provided to us this week, so there was a statement in terms of how we got to looking at the right-hand side versus the left-hand side, and then the numbers that sit behind that in terms of traffic counts were also usefully provided. Primarily, it seems that the focus, particularly, for example, if we just look at going up Molesworth Street, the focus of saying we go on the left-hand side is because of a large number of cars turning onto the motorway off-ramp. That's the reason that's put. We compare that to the supermarket. The supermarket has the same traffic movement than the motorway off-ramp during weekdays, and it has a greater number on weekends when you look at the volumes over a whole day. You look at I mean, you can work numbers however you want, but if you look at, say, how many movements there are over a whole day, cars coming in and out of New World in Thorndon are exactly the same as cars turning left and going onto the motorway. The council's focus is a reliance on peak time comparison. Now, we're not talking about small numbers. The New World car park volumes are significant. On a typical weekday, we're talking about almost 4,000 vehicle movements in and out of a supermarket. So that's 4,000 times that there's going to be a vehicle crossing over the proposed cycleway. And that's 4,000 potential accidents. So the numbers tell a different story, I suppose, from the council's technical analysis. The other thing too, just to think about this, is that the car park access is a bit more complex because we're talking about...
Stephen, just to interrupt, I've put another 5 minutes on, but that will need to include questions.
Thank you very much. The car park analysis in terms of New World is an analysis in terms of going in and out. It's not just one way. So if we're turning off onto motorway, it's one way. Car parks from the New World are going in and out. And at the same time, anyone that's used that car park will know there's a crossover of cars. So you're going up Molesworth Street, you're turning right, and if you're coming out of the supermarket and also going right, you've got a crossover. So it's a much more complex intersection than the turn off onto the motorway. The traffic analysis therefore that the council's relied on, we say is fundamentally flawed because it hasn't taken into account all of these factors, and we've made a submission that's seeking a change in order to avoid these risks, not oppose the cycleway, but to change where it's located to avoid these risks. Very quickly, the only other 2 points, and I can summarise them quickly, we have submitted on the loss of car parks. The issue that arises there is car parks being used in the new world and in the pack and save. So if they're not available publicly, people are going to go to where they can park, and there's a car park there that's a supermarket, and they'll use that. So it's a displacement scenario. The shops along Molesworth Street are actually owned by Foodstuffs, so that strip of shops just outside, they use the car parks that are available on the street. If street car parks aren't available, then often those motorists might come and try and use the supermarket car parks. That will increase the number of crossings. That will put pressure in terms of where the parks are available for supermarket shoppers, and that will also force Foodstuffs to undertake car park monitoring, management and enforcement. And the simple point there is that private car parks, such as the supermarket car parks, should not be used as a default because there is a removal of public car parks. The final point, and this links back to, I know I've focused a lot on Thorndon New World, but in terms of there is a separate submission on Pack and Save Kilburnie, the only additional point there is this justification for the right-hand turn restrictions that we say is lacking in terms of the available analysis on the need for that and the benefits from it. Yet it does have a significant business impact. It's contrary to the Foodstuffs resource consent for the site, and we say it'll force either illegal or dangerous moves by motorists who are just finding a way to get to where they want to get to.
Now, we do have some questions. Thank you. So they'll have to be kept brief.
Yes.
So I've got Councillor Panic, Councillor Holden, Pāenga-whāwhā Holden, and Councillor Calvert.
Thank you. And very briefly, you had meetings with the council. What was the outcome of those meetings? I mean, did you have any agreed steps, just given you're still unhappy? Thank you.
Thank you. There was a meeting, Councillor, this week that occurred with council officers whereby it was agreed that the information would be provided, and it was provided, and it was provided very efficiently. We received the information yesterday, so we had it before today. One of the matters discussed was the potential for engagement between traffic engineers, and so that was discussed at an officer level. The second thing that was discussed was to look at the potential for a meeting to look at the change in the grocery sector over time, and in particular the extent to which you were going to have these large stores such as Thorndon New World, which is a very large store, versus what might be in the future in terms of smaller stores such as the Metro in Wellington, and the extent to which that might arise. So that was, I think, a discussion about an information sharing about where the grocery sector is going, and in particular, I think linked to that, Councillor, the impact in terms of people using online shopping and how that works in practice as well. Because I've talked a lot here about movements by customers, cars, but at the end of the day, all of these stores also have to be serviced in terms of the trucks and the deliveries that come in with all of the goods.
Thank you for that. Pāenga-whāwhā Holden.
Kia ora, thank you. I'm just trying to understand the comparison between the turn-off onto the motorway off the New World Street and the turn into the New World car park. I get it, but won't the turn-off, the cars that are turning onto the motorway, be going a lot faster?
Well, no, you're only fast once you actually start to get onto the motorway complex, but while you're going up Molesworth Street, you're not. You are still restricted in the same way as any other vehicle.
Okay, thank you.
I also should note, of course, anyone that's familiar with that particular turn-off, there's still a pedestrian crossing, so you still have to slow, wait for the pedestrian crossing. In that respect, motorists still have to give way to pedestrians, and that same way they would still have to give way to cyclists as well. So in that respect, it's status quo.
Okay.
Thank you.
Sorry to keep moving things along. I will allow the last question. So that's Councillor Calvert. There are probably others, but we have to draw the line somewhere.
Thank you. Did officers mention to you at all, just in terms of the left-hand lane, why they didn't prefer that up Molesworth Street, that it may have been something to do with Parliament being on that side of the street and the parking for Parliament outside?
Thank you, Councillor. No, at the meeting that wasn't mentioned. The primary reason that was put forward was in relation to the turn-off onto the motorway. There was mention briefly of Hawkstone Street, but the numbers certainly we've got in terms of Hawkstone Street is a substantially smaller number of vehicles coming from that than crossing to and from the New World in Thorndon.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much, Stephen, and I'm glad we've been able to allow you a little bit of extra time. There's obviously a lot of content there. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Right. Right, so now we will be moving to Marianne in person. Welcome, Marianne. Oh, and you've come with Pat. And Pat, we can make room for you at the table.
Mike's just doing it now. Oh, thank you. Okay. It's just coming up now. Kia ora. My name is Marianne, and this is my dad, Patrick. We both put in oral submissions to the Kōpuni Connections, so we're presenting these together. Our whānau have lived in Newtown, Kōpuni and Lyle Bay for generations. In fact, my great-uncle built their first house in Coot Street. My dad is not of Māori descent, but he's greatly respected by members of our family who are Māori, and as a mark of that respect was presented with his tukutuku on his 90th birthday. He has asked me to speak for him today, but he wishes to be present. I'm speaking for both of us. We are not anti the Wellington City Council adding a 5th and 6th bike lane to our area, but the proposed routes will cause disruption and harm, especially to those who are vulnerable and who rely on others for living supports. This dismays many, as there are many common sense options for the cycle lanes that could cause less disruption and harm. For example, down the centre of Freiburg Street. This would be a quieter, safer road for cyclists who include members of our own whānau. I believe the Freiburg Street option was one of the original suggested routes. It would be interesting to know why it was never progressed. You will have had multiple pleas to consider the impact of your current plans on the elderly, the disabled and the vulnerable during this consultation. Dad goes to Onipu Road every week. He can only walk a few metres at a time and at all times needs assistance out in public spaces. He can't use a pedestrian crossing unassisted or public transport even with assistance, and it would be dangerous for him to try and get on a bike. To get from place to place, we need to use a vehicle and we need to park right outside. If we can't remain parked where we are, we need at least 2 whānau members to help, one to drive the car and the other to help him out of it. There are people who are as frail and vulnerable as Dad who reside in Onipu Road and Coot Street, and your designs mean that access to everyday necessities will be impeded for people as vulnerable as these. Dad wants you to know that he hasn't come today here for himself, but in support of those who actually live in the homes that may have living supports disconnected to them. People who can't get themselves to 113 The Terrace and can't use Zoom. He has come so that as you watch him leave the room today, you might think about how your decisions from a position of power directly affect the human rights of those who are more vulnerable. At this point, this doesn't work. I'd like to draw your attention to the first value on the Wellington City Council website. I now want to talk briefly about the Wellington City Council Parking Management Plan for Kōpuni Connections. In this document, people like Dad are described as displaced users. This document is 80 pages in length, and on page 57, I'll have the next slide, please. There is a disclaimer of sorts that advises the use of real-world parking observations. I would like to provide some of those real-world parking observations. Am I meant to be pointing at something? Oh. This is a section of Onipu Road in the middle of the day. It is a similar scene at night. Every available car park has been taken. The parking management plan states that vehicles such as these can be accommodated in side streets. These are the side streets to the section of Onipu Road. Cruikshank Street and Coburn Street. Every available park has been taken. I am puzzled as to where the authors of the parking management plan found the less than 85% occupancy stated in the document, but it definitely wasn't from real-world observations. In the summary and recommendation section of the same document, it states, the implementation of the transitional cycleways and wider transport and infrastructure improvements is expected to incite mode shift away from single car use to active or public transport modes. And there is a claim that because of this, parking demand will decrease. But this is illogical. If more people leave their cars at home and take the bus, parking demand will increase because more cars will be left at home. And what are the wider transport improvements that are going to incite a shift to public transport modes? On page 9, it states that one example is an improvement in high-quality public transport. The facts are, however, that Lyell Bay continues to be the most cancelled bus service in the whole of Wellington, and it's getting worse. There was one accurate statement in the report, however. This statement said that the data indicates that the retained parking supply on Onipu Road, after removal of all the car parks, will not be able to accommodate the existing overnight parking demand. The report considers it acceptable that displaced users can park up to half a kilometre from their homes and walk home in the dark at night, for those that can walk. In respect to reducing the speed of vehicles in Kilburnie and Lyell Bay, we have no problem whatsoever with speed reduction measures at all. I have assisted enough crashes on our road in Lyell Bay to welcome anything that slows vehicles down. But it's essential that when you make changes to one road, you consider the impact on others, particularly when the road is going to be completely blocked. I'm not going to comment on Ewell and Ross Street. For those, I suggest you take the advice of the fire service in respect to how this will affect their access and response times to house fires and CPRs. However, I will comment on Freiburg Street. Whoops. So the first slide was Freiburg Street looking south with Lyell Bay School to the right. This is looking the other way to the north. If this road is blocked, all of those parked cars will need to do a U-turn to get out at the same time as our tamariki are leaving the school and crossing the road, which one might think could be dangerous to little people. In addition, all the traffic that used to go down Freiburg Street is going to tear down Queen's Drive and across the closest crossing to the school. This has been dangerous for many years, and we've put petitions in and contacted the council to do something about the speed on this road. And we believe that the message has finally been taken on board, and we thank you for that. So we are hopeful that this decades-old problem will soon be addressed. Finally, and this might be slightly outside the brief, we would like to make some comments on what we've observed around the City Council engagement with the public in respect to cycle lanes and expand on Dad's submission comments. Australia has a code of practice for lobbyists that states that they should not be corrupt or dishonest. Unfortunately, New Zealand doesn't seem to have such a document. And sadly, there are groups and individuals out there in Wellington who are engaged in what would appear to be illegal behaviour, such as the suspected manipulation of cycle lane usage, cybercrime such as creating fake Facebook pages, and the vandalisation of our streets by placing illegal and dangerous structures in the path of vehicles, pedestrians and cyclists. And this behaviour seems to be blatant and celebrated. Irrespective of its intentions, be those altruistic or for personal benefit, the behaviour actually is illegal and dangerous. If I accidentally drive a few metres in a bus lane, I will be fined $150, and I have been fined $150 and I've paid it. How much did the Wellington City Council fine the people who openly admitted that they did this? Did they face any consequences at all? These people claim that they are frustrated. Well, frustration is not a criminal defence. Criminal experts tell us that accepting low-stakes dishonesty and illegal activities normalises it. Others see that such behaviours are acceptable and they start engaging in them themselves.
So, Marianne, we do have some questions, so I'm just wondering if this is adding a lot to your submission.
Okay.
Or whether we need,
I would just like to say that these types of behaviour, if people are going to be coming to the council table, then there needs to be some credibility around the process, around the behaviours of people that come to the council table.
Right, okay.
Thank you.
All right, so we do have a question from Councillor McNulty.
Kia ora, and thank you for sharing the story, and I hope that our officers will be able to take on board some of the issues that are being faced by you and your father. Just in relation to your points later on, so my understanding is we received 150 submissions in our process from 3 IP addresses that submitted negatively against the cycle lane. So I understand that obviously.
Questions, Councillor McNulty.
So would you agree that we should?
My point was it's a slippery slope, and so it becomes the battleground.
So you'd agree, though, we shouldn't consider those. That would be invalid behaviour.
I think that any behaviour that is not in good faith and is illegal should be, there has to be some standards of behaviour here of what the Wellington public expect, and it goes both ways. And I wonder how that behaviour started.
Okay.
What was the initiative for it?
So I'd like to ask you a question about car parking. Do you think there's the capacity for people to make more use of, given time, make more use of parking on their own sites or in their own garages?
I have had a look at that. I've been down the road and was going to bring some pictures today, but I thought it would be too long. Some of those garages are very small. They're built, some of these houses are fairly old, and the garages it cost people quite a lot of money to repurpose the garages to be used. The other issue is that people that are older, they have a lot of services come in. They have, like, Dad has Meals on Wheels, and for those people, the supports cannot park within the grounds of the house if there's already car parking taken up there.
And my other question, I will slip it in, is if we were to try and provide sort of more mobility parking, or would you think that would be possibly a way to mitigate some of these concerns?
Yes, I think it's probably broader than that. I think it's everyday people, young people with babies trying to unload their groceries. If you have to walk half a kilometre with your groceries because you can't get a park outside your house, Lyell Bay is not always the nicest place in terms of weather. I've lived there for a number of years. It gets very windy. I think mobility parking would be great, but I think it's broader than that. I think it's in general as well. And the other issue we have is that we've seen a lot of multi-units go up in our area. I did have another photo of someone trying to build a house, and they had their bin. Where do you put your bins? Like they could never have got all that rubbish needed for the build. We did our renovation. We had to get a council consent to use a big bin on our street. I don't know how these builders and different people are going to access these properties if all the parking is taken.
Okay. Well, thank you for those points, and they've been well made, and thank you for
coming. Thank you for your time.
And thank you, Pat, for coming yourself as well. Right.
He's alive.
Yeah. So we are actually going to take another small break, I think adjourn until 4:15, and then we have another group of people coming to submit. So thank you, committee. It's been a bit of a long afternoon, but we've certainly heard a lot of interesting information. chance for a bit of refreshment and whatever else. I'd like now to welcome to the table Dame Fran Wild to speak to us on the Thorndon connections. Thanks, Fran. Oh yes, you're welcome to the podium. Yeah.
Is that all right? What do you want?
Absolutely.
Do you want the
No,
podium or
that's absolutely fine.
with either?
Either's fine. Where you are is fine.
Well,
Yeah,
kia ora tātou. Ko Fran Wilder Ho, and I need to say I have never come to a council committee since I've been the mayor, because I don't think it's appropriate for former mayors to be parading around telling the council what to do. But I was exercised by the proposals for Molesworth Street, and so you would have, you've got my submission. I'm not going to go through it again. I think that I support bike lanes. I think they're really important, and we should have had them earlier, and particularly on those big thoroughfares. So Thorndon Quay, yes, and Bowen Street. Molesworth Street is a different creature. It's a major on-ramp to the motorway, and even now it gets very clogged. So traffic right down to Lambton Quay at the end of the day in the rush hour, and it's going to impact further back, I think, down into the CBD. Importantly for locals, and I guess I'm here wearing a local hat as well, there are a bunch of services in the building across the road, in that block across the road from the cathedral. So there's a doctor, there's a pharmacy, there's a optician, there's a post outlet, and a lot of the locals use those services frequently. And they will need to be able to park because not everybody can ride a bike, particularly elderly, incapacitated, or mums with, and they're usually mums, haven't seen many men yet, unfortunately, with a bunch of small kids in tow. Might happen. And you do need to be able to park somewhere and get out safely onto a footpath and not necessarily into the oncoming traffic, which you do if you're parked on the left side of the road going up. So I just really am asking you to think carefully about your objectives, which is making it easier for people to move around and, you know, opening up streets for people of all ages and disabilities in terms of what might happen to Molesworth Street. I see that as really closing down for people who, for some reason or another, need to have a car to get to those particular services. I guess the other thing further up is the New World Supermarket, and it's pretty ghastly getting in and out of there now at rush hour, because a lot of people are going in there and then they're coming out and then they're going onto the motorway, and others are going up to Wagetown or Thorndon. So personally, I wouldn't do the bike lanes in Molesworth. I'd slow the traffic right down and just say to bikers, if you want to go up to Molesworth Street, that's great. You just go up with the traffic, which is going to be slow anyway. So, you know, the risk of accident, etc., is much less. Really, that's all I've got to say. I just wanted to come and say it in person because I do feel very strongly about it, which normally I might have a few remarks in the privacy of my own home about council policy, but in this case, I just felt I really needed to come and say these things. And I'm supportive of the way we're making Wellington more bike friendly. And if I may, it's nothing to do with this issue, but can you please take the rest of the commuter parking off Tinakori Road? It's just nuts having commuter parking still. When I was mayor, we put in the parking charge. Commuters just used to park free all over Wellington. And we've still got commuters coming in, and they just need to be trained to catch the train. And we have good train services. Probably not frequent enough yet, but you know, there are ways of getting in, or ride sharing, etc., etc. So I think that would help free up a bit of space for people who really need to be there, which, you know, the tradies, the mums, the elderly, that sort of thing. So that's it really from me.
Yeah, well, we do have, thank you, Fran, and we do have time for a question or two.
Okay,
so can you keep it brief though? So we've got Councillor Chung and Councillor Wenera.
Thanks very much, Fran, and I have absolutely no objection to a previous mayor speaking at all. Hey, you can be a lobbyist. Hey, Fran, you were mentioning that you think it's safe enough for cycles to actually come up Molesworth Street without the cycle lane, or would you propose a different route?
No, I would say if they wanted to, I would slow the traffic. I mean, it's pretty slow there anyway, frankly. You could have a much lower speed limit there, and they could just bike up. It's not that steep. There are some places I wouldn't advise cyclists to go in Wellington, but I think that would be safe enough because people are going pretty slowly anyway. But there is Thorndon Quay, which is harder to get up than I admit to Wagetown, but they could go, they could do a dog leg there and get up to Tinakoi Road or Bowen Street and then down Tinakoi Road. So really, I just think Molesworth in particular has some particular characteristics. It's got all those big public institutions there. A lot of people go there, they park, they come from out of town. They're not going to get public transport, to arrive at particular times. And there is demand for car traffic there and for parking, actually. And as I said, the services block, that's how I regard it, people quite often need to get out on the driver's side, which is onto the footpath. They can do it now. I mean, I've had 2 hip replacements, and I did that, and there's no way I'd get out into the traffic and then have to pull a crutch out of the back seat, and it's too dangerous. So I'm just asking you to have another think about that one and maybe use another way. The cyclists can still go by all means, but maybe if we slowed the traffic completely, that would just make it safe for everybody. Make it safer for the multiple pedestrians who wander all over the road in Molesworth Street.
All right, well, thank you very much. I think we have actually run out of time for the second question, but thank you.
Thank you very much.
All righty.
Good luck.
Okay, so now we are on to Jimmy. Jimmy, I believe you're online. Yes? Yeah? Hope we haven't lost.
Hello, am I there?
Hi.
Hello, hi everyone.
We can't actually see you, or at least I can't.
You can't see me. Okay, my video's on, but maybe I should just go anyway.
That probably doesn't
That's all right. Okay, yeah, so my name's Jimmy Tate Jameson. I live in Wagetown and work in the CBD. And my wife and I both cycle into work on e-bikes. Sort of done so for the past 3 years. It's a really convenient way of getting into work and home. So we cycle through, we go down Murphy and Mulgrave Street in the morning and at home coming up Molesworth Street. We also walk, I walk and drive through the area as well, so I know it well. Shop at Thorndon New World, so know some of the issues there. Main thing for me is say I really support the proposed changes, part of the project. I think the team has done a really good job of balancing, difficult multiple interests in the area. It's a really challenging area when you've got narrow streets, schools, pedestrians, busy supermarket, and the motorway on and off ramps. I thought the consultation documents were really helpful, and there was ample opportunity to meet with the council team, which I did, and was helpful. The main reason I support it is safety for me. It's a really tough area to cycle through. As a cyclist, you end up on these one-way streets, and it's unclear what lane you're supposed to be in, and if you should be on the left-hand side of that lane or on the right-hand side of that lane or in the middle. We've had cars trying to squeeze past me. It happens regularly, and there just isn't space. I've also been yelled at for apparently being in the wrong place, and maybe I'm in the wrong place, but I see all cyclists doing different things. It just really doesn't work. It's unsafe for cyclists. There are, as a cyclist, I'd be in favour of fully protected cycle lanes, probably along Molesworth Street in the ideal world, but I know there just isn't space for all of that, and it's hard to make things work. But I guess what I'm keen to say is it doesn't work right now, and so something does have to change. And so I would just encourage, any solution you can come up with. Just a couple of sort of discrete things. Maybe one in particular. I think there was a proposal for a raised raise a bus stop on Murphy Street above the overbridge. And the idea is cyclists would coming from Wadestown be on the left-hand side of the road, go around the back of the bus stop, then cross over to the right-hand side and join up in the cycle lane on Murphy Street. I don't think that's really needed. It might be overkill. Cyclists will end up being on the left-hand side and then switching to the right-hand side of the road. I think it could be confusing and something that could be left out from the scheme initially and just see how it goes. I think, yeah, I know that there's opposition to the bi-directional lane along the lower part of Molesworth Street, and if it ends up being one-way lanes along one on Molesworth Street and one on Murphy and Mulgrave Street, I think that would work too. I think one of the really key things is to make sure that cycle lanes link up with other routes, in particular the waterfront route, and so just encourage the team to have a look at that and any solution. Yeah, cycle lanes need to be continuous. I think it's really key for cyclists, and often they're not in the city at the moment because we're in the sort of phase where we are. But yeah, making sure they link up well is key. I think that's all from me. Thank you for the time and for considering it, and yeah, look forward to project progressing. Thanks.
Thank you for that. Just a question from me. There was a suggestion that maybe the speed on Molesworth Street could just be slowed down. What would be your comment on that?
Look, I think it would certainly help, and so not something I'd want to rule out. I think the speed limit reducing to 30 k's in most of town has made it much easier to cycle around. Also, having those cycle symbols on the roads is helpful as well, because it sort of gives cars an indication that cyclists need to be in the middle of the lane here, and it's just not safe for them to be anywhere else. So I think it would help. It's not. I don't think it's not an ideal solution. It's safer for cyclists to have their own space, and it does frustrate drivers. So I wouldn't sort of encourage it, but I think if that, it would still help, and if that's where it has to go, then yeah.
Well, thank you for that, Jimmy. I think we're probably just about at time, and what you've provided us with some food for thought. So thank you very much. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. I think we're moving on now to Colleen, and I can see you there, Colleen. Lovely to see you again. And you can either sit at the table if that's easier, or stand there if that's easier. It's completely up to you. Okay. And as I've said to some of the other submitters, it's 5 minutes. The time is up there. Right. It goes by very, very fast.
Sorry, I'm going to read this. I'm very nervous. I'm Colleen Spencer. I have lived in Wellington for more than 80 years. I have been a Wellington ratepayer for more than 50 years. I live at Lyell Bay. I am here today to represent the people you failed to consider in your information sheet. You were very secret squirrel as to whom you informed of intended changes. I didn't hear about it until just before consultations closed and the public meetings were over. I cannot believe the decision to print the explanatory maps. I'm talking about this in black. I have shown them to friends, both young and old, and all have had difficulty reading and understanding them. The proposed changes, and I quote, will make it safer and easier to get around by bike, scooter, and walking. You have totally ignored those of us who cannot do any of these. I need my car to maintain my independence. It takes 2 buses for me to get to the aquatic centre, the library, and my exercise group. I am unable to reach my hairdresser by public transport. Catching a bus is difficult for me. My most concern is the blocking of Ewell, Ross and Freiburg streets all through thoroughfares. It is not only ludicrous but also dangerous. Do you not understand about speed bumps, such as the ones in Salix Street? There is already a large one, the Leone Gill Walkway. Please do not waste any more money on a trial. The unit next to me is rented by 6 young people. Someone sleeps in the garage, so there are 6 cars parked on the road. If you think that people will give up their cars, you are dreaming. There is a large median strip down the centre of Onupu Road. Have you considered making this the cycleway? The cost would be less, the cyclists would be visible, and the car parks could remain. Why is another cycleway proposed for Coot Street? There is already one west to east on Rongotai Road. Surely one is enough for the few who use them. I attend church at Wellington Cathedral, so Molesworth Street changes are also a concern. On Good Friday, I drove to church at 9:30 a.m. on the way passing 3 cyclists, 2 on a cycleway, 1 on the footpath beside the cycleway. On Easter Sunday, home at 11:45 via Oriental Pay, 13 cyclists on that road, only some using the cycleway, a family of 4 on the footpath beside the cycleway. I am concerned that so much money is being spent on this for little value when so much is needed for infrastructure. Another quote, 30 k's safer speed zones. Is this a joke? Speeds were reduced on Lyle Parade Queen's Drive during lockdown, but seldom observed. What makes you think they might be now? We have not been informed of the turning restrictions proposed for side streets and supermarkets. What makes you think that will work? Thank you for listening to me. I realise that this is just to say you have consulted the community and you will do what you will regardless. We have experienced this with both the Kilburnie Bus Hub and the Cobham Drive traffic lights. Please prove me wrong this time. In my original submission, I referred to the Island Bay fiasco. Please, no repeats. Thank you.
Councillor Calvert.
Thank you for your submission. You've said, as you said, you've lived in Wellington a long time and in the area that you're in. From the people that you mix with in the area, would you say a lot of them support your views, or?
I would say 99% would support my view.
Yeah.
I have friends at the Rita Angus Rest Home who are really, really upset about it.
And how do you, first time I've seen you here, and you might have been here before. Do you feel that how the council is engaging to get feedback from people who don't normally come to us? I'm just trying to understand do you think there's a lot of people who have got a view but haven't given us feedback?
Absolutely. I appreciate the time that you've given to me today, but this morning I was wondering why I was doing it. Yes, I just think that, as I say, you made a mess of Island Bay. Please don't repeat it in Kilburnie.
Thank you.
Well, thank you for that, Colleen. And we've also read your submissions and those of many others. So we have had a lot of submissions. Several thousand actually. We have got a lot of information from people.
Pleased to know that people are thinking about it.
And thank you for your information. It's really helpful. All right, so we are going to move on to Patrick Morgan.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for your attention. I appreciate you've got, 2 or 3 days of this, so really appreciate you engaging with this. In summary, there's strong support from most submitters for what you're planning. We've been talking about this for, I guess, a couple of decades now, and last year the council voted to approve Pāenga-whāwhā. So this is really about how that happens, not whether that happens or not. I really welcome, it's good to hear from a whole bunch of people about their concerns, and I know that council staff are working hard to address those concerns where possible to mitigate any negative effects. But honestly, trying to meet every single issue raised is really a recipe for doing nothing. This morning I was on my way to council actually to listen to your meeting, and my trip was disrupted by some activists who were blocking the street in Mount Cook. They were concerned about the lack of government action on climate. Yeah, I mean, I agree with the intent of what they're doing. I don't like having my trip disrupted, but I have a lot of empathy for people throughout New Zealand whose lives are being disrupted by the effects of climate change already. People who are being flooded through Cyclone Gabrielle, livelihoods put at risk by our infrastructure being knocked out. So somehow you as a council have to weigh up short-term disruption to the way people get around our city, where they park their cars, how far they might have to walk to their destinations, against this huge disruption that climate change represents. And I'm really, really heartened by your commitment to action on that. Let me see. You know, regardless of the submissions you hear, this is not really a vote. You've already agreed to go ahead on this. And I think basic safety, protecting people as they get around Wellington, is a core council job. So, you know, safety is not something that council should be putting to a vote. Let me see. Just in closing, you know, I heard from my friend Miriam the other day who was biking on a street from Tawa to Johnsonville where there's no bike infrastructure and a 70-kilometre-hour speed limit. She felt really unsafe when someone passed her closely. That's something that you as councillors can fix. And seeing through your commitment to building Pāenga-whāwhā, a protected network, is climate action. It looks after our citizens and it treats people with respect. So I urge you to really, you know, keep progressing on the bare minimum, Pāenga-whāwhā. Don't be tempted to degrade sections of the network by substituting protected bike lanes for painted bike lanes, to say, well, let's just slow traffic down, then we don't need to build bike lanes. We know that for many people, they just don't want to share with busy streets. You're not building for the few, we're building for the many. One other point is, I know on Kenya Street in Ngaio, the council removed a bunch of on-street car parks to make cycling safer along there. There were predictions that the sky would fall and the street wouldn't work anymore. The car parks were removed, and we've observed there's still unused capacity on that street. So I think many people have the ability to adapt their trips. I think the transitional approach is the right way to go. Let's try it out, let's fix it where it's not working, and let's improve the quality of the infrastructure where we need to do that. Lastly, I know your staff can't really speak directly, but I really respect the work they've done. You've got hard-working, smart staff. They are really going the extra mile for the council to make these plans happen. And I want to record my personal thanks to them and also to you as councillors for engaging with these issues. Thank you.
Thank you, Patrick. And we do have Councillor Randall.
Yes, I just want to pick up on your comments earlier on. When the council, you're saying when the council is committed to putting in the cycleways, and it's really about a matter of how. Do you think that when the council comes up with a proposed solution and a majority of people say that's not going to work, do you think the council should ignore that?
You know, I point you to your own engagement processes where for both Kilburnie and Thorndon, the majority of submitters were in favour of what the council's doing. However, again, my point is this is not a vote. This is about basic safety, and I think where councillors have a choice about what to prioritise, basic safety and climate action, or, you know, a change in the way people access their houses and where they park their vehicles, I think your choice is actually pretty clear.
Thank you. I don't think there are any other questions, but thank you very much, Patrick.
Thank you, and all the best with your hearings.
Right, so nearly at the end of the day, we have Marge Britt. Oh, welcome. in person. Lovely.
Kia ora, and bear with me because I've never done anything like this before. We're there, and ko Maibret Engelhart toko ingoa, and I'm a resident of Poneke or Te Wanganui Atara. And this is not about bikes versus cars or no cars. The infrastructure decisions we make now have a critical role in defining our city and how it fits into our future landscape. Hopefully we all agree that climate change is real, the economy and business matter and are important. Safety and health and good social outcomes really matter to us. I want a vibrant, dynamic city. Thorndon is becoming increasingly stale as a locale. I work from home some days, and what is there for me to go to or on the weekends? I want a vibrant and dynamic city. COVID and trends like working from home have likely impacted, but the latter should also offer opportunities. The clock won't wind back. There is little now to attract me or others to the Thorndon retail areas or even service areas. Molesworth and Murphy Street should be our city's tourist hub with its beautiful churches, micro parks and parliament in its midst. Bike paths, safe bike parking, along with attractive walking options and appropriate mobility options, particularly for those unable to move, like was just spoken about, can only enhance the district. Plus, less pollution, less emissions, safer commutes and better health outcomes. Business transition is critical. Be creative, consult with businesses, residents, consumers, the local schools. Consider vouchers, events, ad hoc promotions during construction and the transition phase. Contemporary businesses that offer consumer value should not only do well, but thrive afterwards. And that's what we want, rather than just supporting stale businesses who can't. And we can see businesses in the city who are thriving post-COVID. Options for education, enforcement and infrastructure supports and maintenance are also critical. Ensure removing rubbish and glass from bike lanes and footpaths. Enforcing the law for drivers, for cyclists and for others. Without enforcement, it's not going to work. I can't say much about Kilburnie, aside from what I hear from my friends who live there, and they suggest it is also as or more stagnant. I don't feel safe to ride there, and I hop on a bus, and from what I see, why would I go there? So my business goes to Petone and other council areas or at all or online. I'd like to ride there and visit otherwise, but if there was something to go to and I felt safe. Dynamic by definition means change. Yes, change is difficult. Wellington has this window to catch up with the world's most vibrant cities or continue its decline. The evidence of the role of bike, pedestrian and other infrastructure, not just roads, but not taking out roads on livable cities, is vast and clear. Others are better placed to provide them than I am. What is often not clear and often forgotten is that staying the same means moving backwards. The rest of the world moves on, whether we like it or not, and so will both highly educated, high-earning value residents and consumers like me and many of our younger generation. You will all be on the record from your decisions through this process. In 20 years, 30, 50 years, the business community, the rest of the community, residents, and our tamariki and our mokapuna will judge. Either you supported a stale has-been option or world-class, possibly woohoo, Wellington. Tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa. Thanks for the opportunity to speak.
Thank you, Maibret. I hope I got it better that time. We've got Councillor Paul, and if you keep it quick, we can fit in Councillor Calvert.
Thank you so much for your submission this afternoon. I really enjoyed it. It was really insightful. I was interested to know, what are some other things that we can do to make Thorndon less stale?
Micro parks and support businesses. Like the market has a role, and if a business is not vibrant or contemporary, it shouldn't be there. Transition matters. events, fairs. Go and talk to your community. You've got 2 schools in there where the kids are bright. They've got ideas I can't think about, and social media, a whole range of things. Go and encourage creativity at there. Go around and walk in the neighbourhood and ask people on a day to things. That would shock people, but that's a good thing.
And Councillor, it's a good answer. So, Councillor Calvert.
Thank you, and I agree with you about making that placemaking. The thing is, though, this is just a transport corridor. It's being treated, albeit allowing for a different mode. Do you think this sort of thing would be more easier to put through if we did placemaking? We did a plan around the sort of what we've often referred to as the Thorndon precinct that would help. So this. A bike lane, a road, or whatever would be part of a bigger picture, as opposed to just thinking about it, put a bike lane in or a road.
Okay.
No, I'm thinking about that.
We need to keep it a little bit brief.
A transport corridor is placemaking whether you like it or not. Transport doesn't just sit in isolation, and the decisions you make and the way that we act as, whether it's consumers, residents, workers, etc., all make place, whether it's deliberate or not. And so I think having that placemaking vision, like I said, there's opportunity. Like, I walk past Parliament every day. Why is that not a tourist hub? I see tourists there and then they go back on their bus to the cable car. Like, if you had a placemaking vision, it could be really exciting and dynamic, and you could also get out the tension about this is bikes and no cars and this is cars. We have to change as a world. We have to change as a city, or we will change even if we stay here, because you'll lose people or you'll lose the dynamic thing. Even the 6 years I've been in Wellington, I've seen a start of a decline, and I think we're on a precipice, and I think placemaking is a real opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now we need to move on to James. James, are you online?
Yeah, kia kone.
Tēnā koe. Yeah, 5 minutes.
Right, okay. Rara. Okay, kia ora koutou, ai te tuatahi ake mihi te whenua me nā manu whenua. E te tuarua ake mihi kia koutou, kia koutou mai. So my name is James. I grew up here. My family, one of the many that arrived here in the 50s on New Zealand company boats. I live in Omaroro Newtown with 2 kids. I used to work in Strathmore, so I'd very regularly ride along Rongotai Road, Coot Street, and take the underpass towards Strathmore on the bike. And then I spent a while working for a local secondary school as a relief teacher, and so I do the same thing. So it's wonderful to see that there's plans to actually connect the different pieces of cycling infrastructure in that area, because that has been one of the most difficult aspects of the whole thing. So you have bits of beautiful cycling infrastructure, but very little of it is actually integrated and connected. And then when they are connected, half the time they're connected by things like the cycle lane on Coot Street, which disappears as soon as you come to something difficult, like, say, a pedestrian crossing, where you couldn't possibly have room for bikes, cars, and people crossing the road. And so it would be great to deal with issues like that, where you actually create dedicated cycling infrastructure and make the whole place safer for everyone concerned. That's that one. Okay, so Thorndon. So first off, I sent a little mihi to everyone about getting the rid of the angled car parking on lead up to the Old Hut Road. That's wonderful. I used to cycle the kids to the Punareo on Pipitea, and so getting rid of the angled car parking has made that so much safer. But in terms of Thorndon, the plans there look wonderful. The one concern I would have is and I mentioned this in my written submission, is the 2-way cycle infrastructure on Molesworth Street, where you are going downhill and on a corner. And the point I would actually make there, in terms of a little practical point, is you need to make the downhill bit wider, because people will inevitably be traveling faster, and albeit it's a gentle curve, it's still a curve. And so you do need to create the downhill part of that if you're going to keep it a two-way system on the Molesworth Street part of the cycleway, then you need to make that downhill part wider. Otherwise, there will be safety issues. That's pretty much the sum total. Yep, bikes, awesome. We need to actually give people real, meaningful opportunities and ways to get around the city which don't involve hopping in a car. And creating dedicated, safe cycling infrastructure is part of that. Kia ora koutou.
Thank you, James. We've got a question from Councillor McNulty.
Kia ora, James. If I just picked up right, you cycle and you drop your kids off via cycle. Could you expand on that a little bit for me?
Oh, well, I used to. I actually work out in the hut in Te Awa Kairangi at the moment. So it's my partner who does that. So our kids are, at the moment, so our kid is at the immersion unit at Newtown School. And so Pairau atu te arapahi karara, like the cycle lane there is great. And it's great to see you learning from mistakes and making changes as you go, which is a brilliant way to get around doing these things. The 30 kilometers an hour change in the city has made a real difference, particularly for kids. If you're putting them on the back of a bike, to have vehicles which aren't zooming past at 50 k's an hour, that's made a real big difference. And as I mentioned, dealing with things like angle parking is a really good basic way, and it's great to see that happen at Lyle Bay too. Yeah, sorry.
No, that's great. I'm not sure if, I don't think we actually have any other questions, James, but that's been really clear and helpful. Thank you. So, yeah, thank you for coming.
Yeah.
And I think the last is Thomas. Welcome, Thomas. You've been waiting a while. Saw you pop on quite a few minutes ago.
No, look, that's quite all right. Hopefully you can see and hear me fine.
We can, and you've got 5 minutes.
Okay, so I am a blind person and I live in Lyle Bay and I've lived there for 20 years or more. I've lived in Newtown prior to that. I totally support the principle of safety in the community and keeping cyclists safe. But what is being proposed does very little for the safety of pedestrians and those of us who depend on footpaths and using public transport. I spoke to a woman the other day who lives in Lyle Bay who's in a wheelchair. She won't be using the bus when the cycle lanes go in because she is petrified of crossing the cycle lane because there's no room to wait for the bus. You have to wait on the footpath, and so she will either stay at home or she will take taxis. That to me is not about providing a quality life for the people in the community. For me, I travel around Newtown, Lyle Bay, Island Bay, the city, and the cycle lanes in Newtown are a death threat for pedestrians. There are some cyclists who are really courteous, but there are others who will rush past you as you're trying to get on the bus or off the bus. I was out there a few weeks ago in Newtown with some councillors, and cyclists were going up the wrong way. They went through the red lights at the pedestrian crossing, and even one of the councillors was abused when they asked them a question. So to me, if cycle lanes are to work, some cyclists need to be a bit more considerate of those around them. So to me, the design is wrong. I believe certainly cyclists, we need to do more about getting people to use other modes of transport, such as cyclists, walking, public transport, but still cars. Other people need to use cars. And Onipu Road, cars parking on one side of the road is going to go. When you come home at night, if you've got a car and you don't have a garage, you struggle to find a car park. So when those parks go, where will people park their cars? Like Colleen, who was on before, she was very clear. She needs to use a car. So if her parking space goes or is reduced, like outside my house, it's going to be reduced to a 10-minute park, then there is no opportunity for some people to park. And if you have limited mobility, how do you walk from where you found a park 2 blocks away to your own home? So to me, the design doesn't take into consideration safety and the rights of people who use the footpath and who also want to be able to get out and be part of the community. I think that's probably all I have to say at this stage. Happy to answer any questions. I know you'll have read my submission, but yeah, so I'll leave it at that for now.
Thank you, Thomas. And we have one from Councillor Chung.
Thanks very much, Thomas. You might recall that we actually met in Adelaide Road.
Yes.
I'm just wondering, how do you actually get there? Like, how do you drive, or do you catch a bus to?
I catch a bus, but I'm using buses less and less because if I'm waiting in Newtown for the bus, you have to wait on the footpath. You can't wait on the island where the buses pull into. So I don't hear the bus because it's an electric bus when it pulls up. The bus doesn't think I'm waiting, so it takes off. If I know there's a bus there, I go to step out, and sometimes, as you observed, the cyclist will come straight through while you're trying to step on or step off a bus. You know, someone in a wheelchair trying to get off the bus has no real control of their wheelchair or limited control because of the camber of the road and coming down the ramp. So the cyclist could easily go over the top of someone in a wheelchair. You know, children run off the bus straight into the cycle lane. You know, it's not safe. So to me, I spoke to a woman the other day. She comes into the hospital for appointments every few months. And she now gets a taxi because she doesn't feel safe and confident to be able to cross from the footpath to the bus island because of the cycle lanes. And that's not because of just the cyclists, but because of the way that cycle lanes are designed, but also the way the bus stops are designed. So if you get the design right, then it works better for everybody.
We'll have a quick one from Councillor McNulty.
Kia ora, Thomas. You've talked about the
Kia ora.
design being wrong. So I guess what are some suggestions that we could do to get the design right?
Well, I think really working with the community and working with people. So one of the biggest issues for me with the consultation process, I make it my business to know what's going on in the community, and I'm involved with a number of council teams, etc. But lots of people in the community had no idea this was happening because it's all online. There's very little engagement offline. So if you're an older person or you're a person who has limited income, you're not going to be on the internet and making submissions. A lot of older people don't have the skills or the confidence or could afford to pay for broadband. So when you engage with people predominantly online or visually, so for me, getting maps is no point giving me a map. There's no words to describe in real detail what those maps say. So you're excluding a whole host of people from having input into the designs. So we tried to do some work with Wellington City Council and said, look, let's put a bus stop in as a temporary measure. We can give you some feedback on the design, how it works. Oh no, we can't do that because the stops are still coming from Spain. So to me, there needs to be a lot more consideration about the design. Look at what other cities are doing, but also remember the streets in Wellington are quite different from the streets in New York or the streets in Melbourne, etc., or even in Christchurch. But we need to get something that works well for everybody and keeps everybody safe. You know, someone talked before about having the cycle lane down the middle of the road. What about having a cycle lane coming along Onipu Road and the other lane going along Freiburg? I suggested that for Newtown. Rintle Street is a very narrow street. There's a medical centre, there's a retirement village there. Why not have the cycle lane going up Rintle Street and coming down Adelaide Road? No, we can't do that. The design's already been signed off on. So to me, you know, there's not enough willingness to make changes and compromises to still bring about the cycle lanes, but also ensure everyone else's safety is paramount as well.
Thank you very much, Thomas. We'll have to leave it there, but that's been very
helpful.
helpful.
No worries. Thank you.
Okay. Now that does bring us to the end of our speaking list for today, and I've got a couple of processy things we need to do. So we're not going to do the closing karakia because we're not actually closing the meeting. What we are going to do, hopefully, is vote to extend the meeting beyond the 6 hours, and firstly adjourn it until 9:30 tomorrow. But we also do need to vote to extend the meeting beyond 6 hours because it's going to be well and truly beyond 6 hours. So. Yeah, we'll take those two things together. Do I have a seconder? Thank you. I'll take Ben. I would just like to also thank the staff for their time today. It's been a long day, and I know you've already worked hard on this. But yeah, thank you for your attention and for juggling the times, and a lot of work from our DEM services staff. Alrighty, so it's been moved and seconded, so we'll vote on that now. I don't think. And I declare that carried. So that's the close of today, not the close of the meeting, but the close of today's session. And apart from the apologies that we've already received, I guess we can probably expect to see each other 9:30 tomorrow, same place. And we're very appreciative of those who've come, who are not on the committee but just interested. Feel free to continue to come.